Hello and welcome to this week's video on Economics Made Easy, and today I'll be providing a full answer breakthrough on the shifts in supply and demand curves quiz. And you may be asking where I got this quiz from. Well, this is actually one of my own quizzes that I have on my website, and this is the quiz that I decided to work on today, as a lot of people were asking me to focus on this specific video. And I've also gotten a lot of requests on market structures, negative externalities of production, and indirect taxes and subsidies. So those will be the ones I will be covering next. So if you do need some advice on that and actually want to understand that concept a little more, that's what I'll be doing next. But let's go back to the focus of this week's video. And yes, let's just get right into this quiz. Alright, so what shift is this? So obviously you see the price on the y-axis, quantity over time on the x-axis. So here we can see that the supply curve is constant because there's only one supply curve, so you don't need to worry too much about that, to be honest. And we can see that the price of goods and services are decreasing, and so is the quantity demanded for those goods and services. So what is that telling me? I can also say that the demand is shifting to the left. And because it's shifting to the left, as a result, there's less quantity demanded from Q to Q1. So this clearly shows me that there's a shift in the demand curve to the left. And you can very easily also see your left and right. So yes, this is just a diagram identification question. Hopefully there wasn't too much trouble with that. So what shift is this? Now this would be the exact opposite, because now we can see that there's a shift in the demand curve to the right. And because there's a shift in the demand to the right, we're going to see that the quantity demanded for such goods and services will increase. And because firms notices, they will actually increase the prices of their goods, as they now know that due to these increased demands, prices will also rise. So there's a positive correlation there. So there's a shift in the demand curve to the right. All right, next question. What shift is this? So now we're seeing that the demand curve is constant, there's no change in demand, but we can see that the supply curve has shifted to a certain direction, and because of that, we've noticed that the quantity has decreased from Q to Q1, but the prices have increased from P to P1. Now this usually happens when there's less goods and services being produced, and as a result, there will also be less demanded as a result. So I can evidently say that this is a shift in the supply curve to the left. Next, what shift is this? Now here we can see that the price is decreasing from P to P1, and the quantity over time is increasing from Q to Q1. So this is also interesting because now it's the exact opposite, which does make sense. So usually what happens when the supply curve shifts to the right, and that is the answer, it's the fact that because now there's an abundant amount of goods and services, firms decide to scale down the prices which they're selling the goods and services at, and as a result to these decreased prices, there's also be an increased quantity demanded. So that's why it is a shift in the supply curve to the right. What do shifts in either the demand or supply curves away from equilibrium cause? First, let me just establish what equilibrium means. Equilibrium is the point of position where both consumers and producers are satisfied and their needs are met. So both have to be satisfied. Now, in both, I can show you where that point is here on this diagram. In fact, any of these diagrams. Let me start with the first one. That would be at this point where P and Q are, where the supply and demand curves intersect. That is the point where we have allocative efficiency. Same here. So that is the same logic you need to apply. And allocative efficiency is a very important concept that you're going to cover a lot of when we're dealing with negative externalities of production, consumption, but also positive externalities of production and consumption, and of course market structures, where you will learn that a monopoly market structure, for example, has the greatest degree of allocative inefficiency. So we will be discussing all of those concepts later as well. You will also see that through the producer and consumer surplus diagrams. So the allocative efficiency is the point. Again, let me emphasize this point a lot. It's where this is the point where stakeholders want to be at. This is where the producer is happy, consumers are happy, both are happy. So there's no reason to actually move from here. Let's say you're in a classroom and the teacher is in a good mood and the student's in a good mood. Now, if the student does something that annoys the teacher, the student will be a little happy, but the teacher might get upset. So one might benefit, but the other, not so much. So you definitely have to think about that. So yeah, so what do shifts in either demand or supply curves away from equilibrium cause? So I'm basically taking an even scale and I'm either adding or removing it by shifting it. So it's going to lead to allocative inefficiency. And in the long run, you're going to want to move back to that equilibrium point, which is what firms and businesses do. Because now, if the supply curve is shifting to the right, we can clearly see that because the prices are reducing as a result, the quantity demanded increases. So now, what are firms going to do? They're going to increase the price so the quantity demanded decreases back to the original supply curve, because that's where you want to be. You want to be at the equilibrium point. All right. So why is allocative efficiency important? I think I already kind of explained this. It's not just the state where the government wants to be in, it's a state where consumers and producers want to remain in. You want to stay at that point. So what happens when supply shifts to the right? Well, what do we see here? When the supply shifts to the right, we can see that the quantity is increasing, but the price is decreasing. So prices will begin to fall. What happens when supply shifts to the left? Well, let's go back here and check. When supply shifts to the left, we can see that the prices are increasing because there's a minimal amount of goods and services. So, but actually, you check the question again. That's one point, but let me bring back the other point if it's not already obvious. So either there's a problem of excess demand or increased quantity supplied. Well, we clearly know that because there's a shift to the left, the quantity supplied is definitely not increasing, it's decreasing. So there's a problem of excess demand, because now due to the decreased supply, there'll be a lot of competition between consumers regarding who gets those minimal amounts of goods and services. And something really important also you can try to use if you aren't sure, instead of trying to understand which one is right, sometimes it's also best to try to understand which answer is actually incorrect, as that can help guide you a lot. Because here you can spend a lot less time just directly looking at this point and know, oh wait, the quantity being supplied definitely isn't increasing. You can see that it's clearly decreasing. So you don't even need to think too far beyond the point about the fact of competition between consumers, who gets those minimal number of goods and services. You don't need to think about all of that. If you think about it, you need to try to figure out what's wrong with this answer. And it's usually strategies a lot of people use when dealing with multiple choice tests, like the SAT, for example. So what happens when demand shifts to the right? A new equilibrium point will reach, leading to a higher equilibrium price and quantity. A new equilibrium point will be reached, leading to a lower equilibrium price and quantity. Well, let's check. Demand shifts to the right. Well, what do we see here? We're seeing that the quantity is increasing and price is increasing. And that's this point here. So I'm definitely seeing an increase. So yeah, that is your answer. A new equilibrium point will reach, leading to a higher equilibrium price and quantity because there's an increased demand. So what will happen? Prices increase. What happens when demand shifts to the left? Let's check. Demand shifts to the left. Well, we can clearly see that as a result, quantity is decreasing, prices are decreasing. It's definitely not win-win at the moment, and firms will be doing their very best to get back to that equilibrium point. So there is the problem of excess demand or excess supply. So I want you to think about this now for a second. What would happen here? Minimize demand. So what would happen if there's less demand? Is there really an excess demand problem? If demand is shifting, no. There's a problem of an excess supply, which is why the prices decrease to get rid of that excess supply. So it's a problem of excess supply. So now I'm pretty confident that we have all of our answers correct. So let's actually check to see if we are correct. Alright, let's view our score and hopefully we got everything right. Let's see this. And yeah, that's 10 out of 10. I hope that was easy to understand, and if you had any problems understanding the concepts, that all of it got cleared. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Definitely make sure to check out my website, because there's even more in-depth quizzes that you will definitely see, especially my market structures quiz, for example, which is worth a whopping 50 marks. It will definitely take a little bit of time to complete, but I promise you, these are some of the best. This website itself has some of the best resources you can use to revise, and I really hope that you guys make the best use of it, because we live in a world with so many resources, and I truly believe this website has the ability to help you move to the next level in economics. But otherwise, I'll see you guys next week.